We believe that within 10 years' time, we'll see 10 billion US dollar company can be produced, right? And then more than 20 out of them will be more than 5 billion US dollars.
But I think right now, because getting the funding in Asia or in Taiwan, it would be much easier compared to 10 years ago. I think right now the choice for entrepreneurs, they need to think, they need to be close to the market, close to the consumer, rather than close to the funding.
Hello everyone, welcome to TaiwanPlus Point. I'm Catherine Liu. When speaking of one of the greatest strengths of Taiwan, some people will say it's technology or manufacturing. But right now everything needs to be pivoted or renewed to fit in the global market. So today we're going to talk about Taiwanese innovation, Taiwan startup ecosystem, and also the future of business. Today we have Alex Lee on the show to share the investor point of view. And also we have Peter Yang, who is the founder of Pinkoi, a leading tech startup here in Taiwan. Alex, as a promoter for Taiwanese startups, do you see Taiwan producing more than one tech unicorns in the near future?
Thank you for having me here, Catherine. I like the word promoter. The short answer is yes, I believe Taiwan will produce more than one unicorn from a startup space. As a matter of fact, last year, the firm I run, QIC, just made a prediction. By 2031, right, Taiwan will produce more than 100 unicorns.
That's amazing, 100 unicorns, you said.
Yeah.
In what space?
And well, more than that, if I can finish that, among these 100 companies, we believe 5 of them will produce more than unicorn. Normally, we describe unicorn as a $1 billion US dollar in terms of market capitalization, right? We believe that within 10 years' time, we'll see 10 billion US dollar company can be produced, right? And then more than 20 out of them will be more than 5 billion US dollars, right? And most of them, I would suggest, they are not coming from a traditional so-called manufacturing basis type of a company. I would rather borrow the word new economy to describe this type of company. Yeah.
What's your definition for it?
I think the new economy better be referring to, for any company, they raise capital and invest in nothing to do with direct kind of physical capex investment. Unlike their previous generation kind of a manufacturing company, they invest in the plan, right? They build up a capacity and produce technology good and sell it, right? But most of the so-called new economy company, they build up a product. The product normally is a service, app, or all kind of an application, software basis, right? And at the same time, when they actually raise a capital, right, and do the investment, normally they invest in the technology, i.e. product, as well as the market, right? They try to penetrate into the market, including Taiwan and the rest of Asia, maybe to the rest of the world, right? They buy the market. When I say buy the market, they invest in a lot of marketing expenses, acquiring the nice, good talent, and so on and so forth. By doing so, they can expand their market size, right? That's how I define like a new economy here in Taiwan.
When speaking of softwares and products, we're known for to have the best engineers here in Taiwan and also the mind for innovation. So why didn't this unicorn exist before? Why now?
It's a very interesting kind of a question. As a matter of fact, before the interview, I just a brief chat with Peter. Say, for example, 20, I would even say 30 years ago, right? You have a lot of great engineering coming from the US, a same place, Silicon Valley, right? And at that time, you're talking about those engineering by working with a lot of great technology company, mainly hardware-based company with a more than 10, 15 years experience. They came back to Taiwan to build up the company like a TSMC, the company like a lot of the so-called EMS, doing a notebook, handset, and so on and so forth. That was 30 years ago, right? If you look at it around like what happened in the Silicon Valley and most of the US, right? What type of company dominate the US technology company? They're all software company. Yeah. So no wonder you have a lot of great talent coming from those great company, no matter from Google, Facebook, to come back to Taiwan, start up a Taiwanese type of a software-based company.
I see.
The timing is just right now.
Okay, so that's why it's happening right now in the near future.
Yeah.
So Peter, you built Pinkoi, a design-oriented platform for younger generations who are interested in living a modern lifestyle. Your company also have a successful footprint in Japan and Thailand. Do you agree Alex's point of view?
Definitely. I think I'm a strong believer about the future of the new economy company in Taiwan. I think if we look back, during the first few years when Pinkoi started, like back to 2012, at the time, I think company, when they tried to raise funds, it was very challenging. At the time, I still remember if a company can raise 2 million USD with a post valuation around 10 million post valuation would be very good. So
That's when?
That's when 2012.
Okay, when you first started Pinkoi.
Yes, yes. So I think at the time, funding is very limited, and a lot of we don't really have a lot of investors in this kind of startup ecosystem, and people are really kind of risk averse at the time. But if you look at back in the last few years in Taiwan, I think the startup ecosystem is very vibrant. You see, there are many rising sectors, especially, but there are also software-based companies, especially like biotech, Marcom, AI, SaaS, and even marketplace. And there's many service companies that are actually running their service using software, and sometimes they also leverage the strength of hardware manufacturing in Taiwan. So I think that's when we're looking forward, we are very excited about the future of Taiwan.
Peter, can you please share with us a bit more about Pinkoi's success story? I am particularly interested in how you secured funding from Sequoia and GMO and other investors. I'm wondering what kind of adjustments were needed to gain their support.
I think we were very lucky to get this kind of recognition from investors like Sequoia. I think one thing is Sequoia, they understand how challenging it is to run a business like Pinkoi. We're building an international two-sided marketplace in Asia. So I think the business fundamental is very challenging. So I think that's one thing. The other thing is I think Sequoia, they believe the vision that we believe. We believe that the design can become an universal value. And when we look at the keyword design, it represents two keywords, creativity and innovation. And we deeply believe if we can infuse more creativity and innovation to our society can progress in a much better way. So I think Pinkoi is taking a very different approach while using commerce. So from the outside, you see Pinkoi as a cross-border international marketplace, very technology-driven and also very social conscious. So we're taking a very different approach. We're using commerce to lead a social movement. I think this is very important. If we can infuse more creativity, innovation in our life, I think the young generation, the future generation of Taiwan, or even the generation in Asia, they can enjoy a much better life. The life they can be more fulfilled, more satisfied.
I'm also very curious of what kind of changes were needed to gain international investor support or from Silicon Valley support.
I think number one, we need to clearly state what would be our ambitions. So our ambition is to try to become an international leading, technology-driven, and social conscious marketplace that stands for the first search engine and final destination of design and lifestyle. So I think to tell the story about our ambitions and the using commerce to drive this kind of social movement, I think that's one thing. The other thing is more fundamental. I think we need to pay more attention on international expansion. So we need to set up our regional office in different markets as fast as we can. So that's number one. And the other thing is we also need to kind of tell them what we are going to picture the future in terms of how we're going to drive our revenue stream. And those revenue streams, how they connect with our business and also with our customers. So I think the international investors, they are paying much more attention about the future story of your business. They are not looking at right now, they are looking more at the future.
I see. So Japan and Thailand are the hottest market for Taiwanese startups to go. Do you have a lot of experience to share with Taiwanese young entrepreneurs to go into these two markets?
I think every market in Asia, they are different beasts. So I think there's one word I think we can share is go local.
Go local.
Go local, like global and local.
Glocal.
Right, local. So when we tried to enter Japan, at the time, it wasn't very successful at the very first few years, because at the time we are thinking from a Taiwanese point of view or from the Western point of view. So when we enter Japan, we think, okay, we'll just launch a website, we'll put up the Japanese translation, and everything was done. Customer will come to your marketplace and buy stuff.
It's not that simple?
It didn't happen. It didn't happen. So I think at the last few years, we learned that it's very important to really understand that, to understand their cultures, what Japanese consumer they are looking for. They're looking for all the font on the Pinkoi app and Pinkoi website. The font they are very comfortable with. The font, even the font. I think Taiwanese people probably doesn't really care about the font.
It's very detailed.
Yeah, very detail oriented. And they also care about the company profile. They need to understand what kind of company they are doing business with. So they are very care about the trust. So I think we spend a lot of effort to work on those subtle details, try to gain the trust and respect from the local team member and also our local partner. And that kind of trust and respect can attract more Japanese consumer and designer to join our marketplace.
So know more about your market, be globalized and localized at the same time.
Right.
Alex, I want to talk about the investment environment here in Taiwan. People will say Taiwan could be relatively conservative. There's a lack of angel investors or Series A round investors. Do you feel this way?
I guess in general, investors here in Taiwan, they've been conservative, right? They've been particularly conservative in the so-called new economy business before, right? But a lot of changes happen in this particular space, right? Particularly that in the last, I would say, 3 to 4 years, right? We see a lot of, including domestic and foreign capital, they love to invest in the early stage, kind of a startup company, new economy, software-based type of company. Based on the statistic I gather, right? If I look at the last decade, right? The last 5 years,
Yeah.
the total money raised for the startup companies in the new economy space grow about 4 to 5 times than the first half of the last decade. So the money is much aggressive right now, particularly for the early stage, but not necessarily so for the later in the growth stage.
That's what your company is trying to do more and more.
Yeah, if I may, because go back to your first kind of opening, like as a promoter, right? We've been committed as a promoter of a Taiwan kind of old and a new economy in the last almost like 30 years. Before we talk about as a promoter of a so-called Taiwan new economy in a startup company, we and my colleague, we've been promoted or helped to promote and produce more than 3 dozen unicorn company in Taiwan, including the company like a TSMC or Sustec and so on and so forth, right? We simply just follow the pattern, right? By promoting Taiwan kind of best class, quality class kind of Taiwanese technology company to the same and further expanding to like a global investor, right? To apply to the Taiwan new economy. And in the last, I would say roughly about around 3 to 4 years, the same group of a global investor, they start shifting, not only investing in the company like a TSMC, UMC, MediaTek, to now to the space like a software company, a new economy. We see them all over the place here in Taiwan, right? I'd love to share more detail.
Yeah. But when you use the term promoter, do you think that To me, it sounds like the statistic of the company cannot speak for itself. So need you as a promoter, as a bridge for a Taiwanese company to be introduced to international investors. Why do you think?
I think this is a very interesting kind of observation, right, you just made. If you look at Taiwan, probably 90% of the public trading company are really much like a manufacturing-based company, right? And also because for our culture, the regulation, people evaluate or invest a company pretty much based on some sort of cash flow basis or accounting basis of valuation. Say, for example, people tend to look at a company's multiple in terms of like a P/E ratio, right? People tend to look at how much dividend they pay out, right? But I have to agree that this is one part of the way to look at a Taiwanese company. But I have to say, this is not 100% way of how global investors look in the company, particularly in those new economy or software companies. People need to learn, particularly when I'm talking about Taiwanese investor in a Taiwanese company, they need to learn how to embrace those new type of investment kind of language. People tend to look at a company at a PS ratio, price to sales ratio, even a company without producing any sort of so-called like an earning or positive cash flow, right? You see many other cases, successful cases happening in the U.S., not only U.S. They happen in Japan, they happen in China, happen in many other markets. People tend to look at and invest in the company with a great plan, with a great vision, right? With a number of users, with a revenue, even though they haven't produced so-called the earning or they haven't pay out the cash dividend yet, right? I think this is a major changes or major difference between traditional Taiwanese investor versus a global investor.
I see. That's where your company comes in.
Yeah.
Peter, do you agree? And what do you think about the investment environment here in Taiwan? Do you see any changes?
Well, I think it really depends on what kind of industry you're in. So if your company is in software business, I think the overall investment environment has been very friendly to entrepreneurs. So if you have a very good idea to have a software-based company, it's very easy to get the first ticket from angel investors or like institutional investors. Look around in Taiwan, you will see there's many accelerator and incubator, not only local but also international brand. They also set up those kind of office in Taiwan, try to hunting for those talented entrepreneurs. So I think that the overall environment for me, from my observation, I think is very positive. And the dynamic is very friendly to innovation. And I think, and to tell the truth, I think an investor in Taiwan, there's a paradigm shift. They are much more willing to embrace risk. So I think they also have the mindset that what would be the future of Taiwan? The semiconductor industry right now is very booming. But what about after 20 years? What would be the new industry for young generation? I think that's a question they're always thinking about. So we are in this kind of industry, and we know, like Silicon Valley, they're always talking about software is eating the world. And we believe that because I think in the future, the software would enable and empower a lot of facility and service. And those facility and service is going to benefit and change people's life. So that's what we believe. So I think if investors, they are looking in the future, like from this lens, what is not going to change in 20 years in the future? I think that kind of creativity and innovation is not going to change. And those kind of things is going to be very beneficial to all the entrepreneurs in Taiwan.
I think about 10 years ago, startup founders will want to go to 500 startups or YC in Silicon Valley because they believe they want to be closer to money or investors in Silicon Valley. Right. Do you feel this is still the same way here right now here?
I think it's still an option for any entrepreneurs. But I think right now, because getting the funding in Asia or in Taiwan, it would be much easier compared to 10 years ago. I think right now the choice for entrepreneurs, they need to think, they need to be close to the market, close to the consumer, rather than close to funding. Because right now funding is not an issue anymore.
Alice, do you agree?
Totally. I guess more than that is for the whole process of a capital market development or in terms of like a fundraising development. I think new economy type of software company particularly, they're going to experience quite different sort of a type of a fundraising or capital market requirement versus a traditional manufacturing basis company. Well, think about it. In the last 30, maybe 40 years, any hardware manufacturing basis company, right? They raise fund. They may raise another round of fund, so long to the point they start making a profit by selling the product to the global manufacturer or global branded company, no matter there are the Apple, HP, Amazon, and so on and so forth. Soon after they're in the money, they can start applying for the IPO. So long they meet whatever, that those are black and white cash flow related kind of requirement, they go public, right? But for software company, personally I believe this is like a non-stop. You can, of course you can possibly like make profit, right? And comply with whatever the regulation go for public. But you'll be looking at a really tiny, small kind of software company. Just like a many great software and a game changer company in the US, right? The reason they don't want to make profit because they want to use every cent they generate from a revenue, reinvest to gain the more market share or to create more different kind of a product, right? That is a very different kind of capital market business model to new economy, right? So we need some changes, not just only from like an investment basis. I think the regulation, the ecosystem also require the brand new sort of kind of infrastructure built up here in Taiwan.
It's interesting that you talk about regulations. Do you see right now Taiwan government's regulation for startup systems as a challenge?
I won't say so. Well, also the capital market, no matter the regulator, the Taiwan Stock Exchange and some other exchange, they start sensing there's a demand from a new economy type of a company, right? They start trying to launch the new system, right? I think just like sometime last week, Peter and I just joined a very interesting event, which jointly launched by QIC and the Taiwan Stock Exchange, right? Which is about TIB Panovation, right? TIB stands for Taiwan Innovation Board. This is a new board. As a matter of fact, it's going to be the third official stock exchange here in Taiwan, right? They are going to adopt much creative way to help a new economy company, like a software company, without producing any profit to go public. As a matter of fact, at a point we are talking about now, there is another company, which is a Charles company, Ply Nitride, right? Which just got an approval from the Taiwan Stock Exchange board for go public. Sometime maybe July, I don't know when precisely the time is, at a TIB. So we are going to see the first ever, right? The company without committing any profitability go public as an IPO company here in Taiwan anytime soon.
I see. Is that also the reason why you think there will be more than one tech unicorns?
That's one of them, right? But more than that, the reason I think one more reason I probably can share with you, outside that including like the Ply Nitride and some other company, they are looking for doing public listing here in Taiwan. Bear in mind, those are public information. You got a couple other company. They will be looking for some other foreign exchange for public already. The company like another software company, I pay them a lot of kind of respect, Perfect Corp, right? They just finished another round of so-called like a pipe investment. This is part of a process for SPAC. I think they are going to go for the IPO in the US, right? Through the SPAC kind of process. And in my opinion, I have seen more than a dozen of this type of software company. They are coming from Taiwan. They are Taiwanese. They are coming from like a very innovative, no matter in the new business or all different kind of technology company, if a Taiwan regulator or Taiwan government, without doing anything, they'll go elsewhere for further kind of a public listing. It is happening. So my observation is not purely based on count down the bin that how many company is going to become a unicorn by listing here in Taiwan. I'm talking about all Taiwanese company, right? They've been looking for all kind of a public market.
Yeah, they have different choices.
They've got all different choices, right? If our regulator or government, without like making more aggressive kind of a pitch, right, they are going to list it everywhere. But how would you describe this type of company? Soon after they list in some other market, someone listing Japan, someone listing in the US. How would you describe them? They're still coming from Taiwan. They are still Taiwanese company, but listing in other kind of a market or exchanges.
I see. Aside from the investment side, do you feel Taiwanese government policy or restriction friendly for Taiwanese ecosystem?
Okay, I think from a policy point of view, regulation is essential. But I think the important thing is how you're going to do this kind of regulation. If regulation is going to be very strict, you're going to lose a lot of momentum. If the regulation is going to be very loose, you lose protection for the general investors. Right? So protection and growth, we need to strike the balance. So from the TIB point of view or Taiwan government point of view, I would suggest that I think think about what would be the investor for the future. That would be the young generations. The young generation.
A new economy.
The young generation. I'm not saying that institutional investors. I'm saying that the retail investors, the young generation, they are thinking differently. So previously, I think in the past 10 years, the young generation, they understand how to invest the company. They are more willing to embrace the risk. They understand how to look at the numbers, doing this kind of chart, do their homework and do the analysis, and put their money onto the company they believe is going to be succeed in the future. So I think from my point of view, I would suggest that the regulation need to be opened up a little bit to create liquidity, to create more investors. They are going to join this kind of party and to enjoy the reward when many more Taiwanese companies going to succeed. And number two, if we look at if Taiwan market is going to be, or Taiwan, the overall entrepreneurship in Taiwan is going to be very successful, we need to look at from the competitive landscape. If we look at Asia, so we look at Japan. Japan, they have motherboard. The motherboard is very similar to the TIB. I think they all like try to encourage innovations. They all try to encourage this kind of disruptive business. The motherboard has less restrictions, less regulations. They encourage more people to join that kind of market. So I think going forward, I would suggest that our Taiwan government to really open up the regulations little by little and to infuse more growth momentum for the future.
If I may, there's one very important point that Peter make a very sort of a different view from whatever the regulator or from a normal investor looking at. But to me, it's the same thing. When I joined this industry as equity sales like almost 30 years ago, when I try to promote Taiwan company, right, we speak English, try to present a company in the most professional way, right, to the global investor, no matter whether they are sitting in London, New York, or Hong Kong, right? I feel we are global, right? Yeah. But the truth is, when investors feedback to me, is the reason they love investing in Taiwan 30 years ago, even longer time, because they love domestic investment kind of a climate, including liquidity. What is the beauty and the uniqueness of a Taiwan equity market?
Yeah.
It's a retail. Retail costs a lot of liquidity, turnover, right? This is not something really commonly seen at the market, right? Of course, over the years, we start seeing the retail investor in terms of percentage of the total market turnover being dropping. But again, they still represent a huge kind of liquidity and investment interest, right? So the same thing applied to the new economy kind of a company. The global investor investing in any kind of new economy or software company, they also prefer to see where are the other side of the investment, the investor, right? They want to see retail, they want to see institutional investor all come in to join, no matter you call that TIB or new type of like a startup company, right? Because there's a terminology in our world. Liquidity always invite liquidity, right? Regardless you are from an institutional investor, global investor, or retail investor, liquidity is the key of the capital market. And then when you have enough liquidity, guess what? You'll see the valuation get trading up. As a matter of fact, even though we don't have that many examples to compare like apple to apple from a software company to software company, but if I may use the roughly about 50-something kind of a Taiwanese company, they're falling into the broader definition of new economy. There are more like a gaming company, software company, and the first ever listed kind of a SaaS company, 91 apps, right? Versus the rest of the similar company trading in a other kind of Asia stock exchange. You'll find it very interesting in terms of valuation as a result. All this is a Taiwanese company trading at a premium in terms of valuation, no matter from a PE, if they have an earning, or PS ratio, versus their other counterpart in other exchange. So I'm thinking about why is that? Again, it could be many other reasons, but I have to contribute the retail participation, right? The domestic institutional investor. They are part of the growth of the valuation versus some other market. So this is very, very important. And I hope that the TIB as a market, they can further open up to much broader based kind of domestic investors, which will invite more global investors join the TIB transactions.
Peter, with relatively smaller market size for Taiwanese startups, many believe that we should follow example of Israel or Sweden and Finland. What can we learn from them?
I think there's two aspects that I think Taiwan government can actually learn. One is about policy. I think in those countries, you will see their national policy encourage innovations. They open up a lot of regulations to allow like more innovative, more disruptive business model to rise. For example, in Finland, there's a design brand called Marimekko. And if you don't know Marimekko, you probably know Angry Bird, right? So Angry Bird is a gaming app that is really popular worldwide. So I think from the policy side, their government really opened up those kind of regulations to encourage this kind of young entrepreneur to really take a chance, take the risk, and try to do something that is really great. And the second, I think, is about the educations. I think their English capability compared to Taiwan right now, I think they are much better than us. I think English, is an international language. If you don't speak English, it's very hard to serve your customer in different market, or to build partnership with investors from different part of the world. So I think that's very important. So the education part, not only language, but also from their children to adult, they actually encourage this kind of dare to fail spirit. So I think in our traditional, conventional educational framework, we all educated to kind of do your job, be a very good student.
Zero mistake.
Zero mistake.
Can't fail.
You cannot fail. So when you have this kind of mistake, you think this is a failure. But those countries, they actually see the failure is the door to the next success. I think that's very important. I think that's the mindset that we try to encourage not only our team member, but also all the people that we know. We need to dare to fail. If we don't dare to fail, we are not going to change the world. So back to that, I think open up regulation, open up policy, and open up funding. I think this can create a very tremendous opportunity for young generation, not only from the investor point of view and also entrepreneur point of view. There's a saying that the stock market in the short term is a voting machine. In the long term, it's a weighing machine. So I think when Taiwanese government think about the future investor is going to be the young generation. Those young generation, they probably doesn't need any protections. They need more opportunity. They need more opportunity to cast their vote to the company they love, to the company they're actually using their service or consuming their product. So if we can give young generation opportunity to vote to the company, vote to Taiwanese future, I think that the future in Taiwan, I think, would be very bright.
Wow, amazing. Alex, can we have our own Taiwanese style? Do we have to follow others' example?
When you're talking about Taiwan style, right? That is definitely is a happening, right? Not only in terms of like a great and an innovative company like a Pinkoi and a founder like a Peter, right? You also bear in mind you also got a lot of very creative investors from a younger generation, but also the global investor here in Taiwan. Bear in mind, Taiwan as a company, as a country, as a market, this is one of the most globalized kind of equity market in Asia. In the last 30 years, from the day one to open up for the global investor, now foreign investment roughly represent 40 to 43% our total market capitalization, right? This is huge. If you compare that to the market like a Tokyo Stock Exchange, Tokyo Stock Exchange being considered as one of the earliest so-called like a globalized equity market. But guess what? Their foreign holding is roughly about 30% after 40, 50 years development, right? This is something that is Taiwan unique. That's Taiwan style, right? You have a domestic investor, you have a young generation creative investor, you got a global investor. I can't see any capital market in Asia have those most beautiful combination from a 3 or 4 different kind of angle. So we are living in Taiwan style right now already. And I believe with a more deregulation or more younger kind of a startup company like a Peter, like a Pinkoi join the capital market, I only see further upside of Taiwan capital market.
I see. Thank you, Alex and Peter, for these unique insights. As Alex shared with us, there will be more than 100 tech unicorns in near future. So to understand better, please go to TaiwanPlus.com or download the app to understand more. And please go check pinkoi.com to learn more about your success story. Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus Point. I'm Catherine Liu. I'll see you next time.